My name is Ruth. I am 69 years old. I am 69 years old, a widow, and have lived almost my entire life in the same apartment in Portland, Oregon. But now, now I live in a house I bought just for myself. After raising a daughter, my farm, taking care of grandchildren, one day, a sick husband. One day I woke up and thought, is there still time to do something just for me? And it did. Nice. But what would you do if, after 12 years of being forgotten by the whole family, they knocked on your door as if nothing had happened, and thinking they could take everything you've built on their own? Maybe you think I'm exaggerating, but I know what it's like to be ignored. I know what it's like to spend your birthday in silence, Christmas alone. And when I finally found peace, I discovered that people who disappear for years can come back when he realizes that you have won. Today I'm going to tell you everything. The truth. What happened the day they opened the gate to my new cottage, thinking that they were still in charge of my life. And what I did. Mom. No one expected it. Stay until the end, because you will see that we can even get old. But he never loses the right to defend himself in silence and with class. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. Nothing, absolutely nothing prepared me for what I saw that morning through the camera at the entrance. After 12 years of being forgotten, without a phone call, without a Christmas card, nay, without even a "how are you," my daughter showed up. Not alone, nay, down. A black SUV, tinted windows, full trunk. Rebecca, my son-in-law, Josh, and more people. And so, Tom. A lot of people. I walked slowly to the door, my hand still damp from the cream I had smeared on my arms. Open. I spoke a single sentence, and their faces turned pale, no sound, as if they had seen a ghost. But what they didn't know is that, on that day, I wasn't the one who was going to be surprised. That it was them. Now, hello, with the accordion, okay. Before I continue, can I ask you something? If this story has ever caused you some strange feeling in your chest, if it reminded you of someone, or if you have ever felt forgotten like I have for so many years, give me your company here. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Wait out. Turn out dual cars. It's not because of the number. It's because I know that there's someone on the other side listening. Why tell that? It will hurt. But I need to. And maybe, no, deep down, you need to listen too. I remember well the year I ceased to exist. It was in 2011. In the summer, Rebecca, married Josh in a beautiful, modern ceremony. And they had too, full of hanging lights and food that I couldn't even pronounce. I was there. Of course, I made a point of going well-dressed, hair done, light nails, noun, pearl necklace inherited from my mother. No, I sat in the last row on the bride's side, where no one bothered much. When she entered, only so beautiful, with that white dress and smile of someone who believes she is starting life. I felt a little bit of pride and a twinge of fear, a fear that I didn't understand yet. I just felt it. That day, Rebecca gave me a hurried kiss and said, Thank you for everything, Mom." And this everything was a lot. I had helped pay for part of the dress, bought flowers when the budget tightened, made the bridesmaid souvenirs with my hands, and I wasn't even mentioned in the speech. After that, no, the messages began to decrease. The phone rang less and less. I was the one who called. "Is everything okay there?" And there was always that quick answer. Always that quick answer. "All right, Mom, I'll call you later." But he didn't care. I tried to justify it, telling myself that it was a rush, that newlyweds need space, that soon things would go back to normal. But they did not return, and the absences began to multiply in a way that hurt. The first Christmas, after the wedding, Rebecca texted me at 11 p.m. now, saying they were in San Francisco with their in-laws. No invitation, no remembrance. I spent supper with a plate of microwaved turkey and a glass of cheap wine that I had bought just in case. The worst thing was not even the silence. It was indifference. At the baptism of my first grandchild, I found out through social networks. I saw the picture of the baby in the baptismal font with the caption, "Blessed moment." And there I was, with the Bible open in the room, waiting to be called to something that had already happened. Not you, Tiresto. That tore me inside. But I didn't say anything. I just closed the notebook where I had written a psalm that I wanted to read that day, and put it in the bottom of the drawer. After that, the visit turned into alms. Every 2-3 years, Rebecca showed up with the children just to leave it with me. "Mom, will you take care of them for a few hours? I have a meeting." Hours that turned all afternoon. Once, she left me with a fever and everything. When he returned, he didn't even ask how I was. He just took the children and left, saying, "Wow, Hanan Kardipsta, they are so hungry. I hope you have given something." I remember that night I looked at myself in the mirror in the hallway and thought, where did I disappear? Because there, in that reflection, I no longer saw the woman who educated children at school, who made corn cake for the neighbors, who sewed clothes with love. I saw a shadow, a functional old woman, Eugenizer, silent, disposable. You know, sometimes what hurts is not the offense, it is the erasure, the gaze that passes you like wind, the absence of questions, the certainty that your pain is not missed. And the worst thing is that it happens slowly, like a dripping faucet. When we see it, it's already soaked in hurt, and no one noticed. Allow me a pause here, because maybe you're feeling something similar. And if you did, I understand you. I know how this emptiness that no one sees weighs. If you've experienced something like this, comment below. Just one sentence. A sigh. He writes, I've lived it. It touched me. Or even it's true. Just so I know you heard me. That my pain did not pass through this screen alone. I never confronted Rebecca. I never asked why he disappeared. No, I just kept moving away. Not as revenge, but as someone who accepts that she is no longer welcome. I stopped calling. Soon, and I had sent always muchastinam, ultratire, on sirikaisu. And after a while, even her name, I stopped saying out loud. She said my daughter so she wouldn't cry. And so the years went by. The dates were becoming empty. Birthdays came without a phone call. The grandchildren's photos grew up without me. And I followed. Kanaya, silencing me. How? But do you know what hurt me the most? It's just that, even with all this, deep down, I still waited. I hoped that one day she would knock on the door and say, Mom, forgive me. I made a mistake. I expected recognition, a longing, a hug that said, You're still important. This hope is cruel, because it keeps the wound open. But I never imagined that the reunion would happen the way it did. With that car in my garage, with that sudden invasion, with that rehearsed smile, and intentions that I will never forget. Because when I opened that door, I saw in their eyes that they didn't come for me. They came for something else. But what did they want? Exactly? And what did I say? In that first sentence that made everyone turn pale? I'll tell you. And when you know, perhaps you understand why silence is sometimes the highest form of justice. When Harold died 2 years earlier, Tom, I was still living in that apartment in Portland. It was a nice, spacious place where we raised Rebecca, celebrated birthdays, faced illness, cried and laughed, grew. But after he was gone, the house was mute and cold. The furniture started to look too big, the corridors too long. The photos on the walls began to stare at me in silence, as if asking me to leave. And I left. I sold everything. I had clothes donated. I sold the furniture that didn't bring me peace. And with the help of a patient broker, Mr. Dalton, a widower like me, I found a remote little house on the outskirts of Ashland, Oregon, far from the city, from memory, noise and trials. It was an old house with white wooden windows, signs, a generous porch, and a sleeping garden. But it was enough to step there for me to know. It was mine. I bought it in cash. No funding, no help, no one to give an opinion. And I began, little by little, to make it a nest of my own. Now, I took my mother's trunk, my grandmother's cabinet, hung a picture I painted in the 80s, and started planting lavender in the backyard, right on the curve where the sun touches at dusk. I made sourdough bread, read old novels, embroidered pillows that I didn't have to give to anyone. He slept without guilt. I woke up with the birds. The neighbors in the region were discreet, each in their own time, Nimda city or kite, when shooting where. In their terrain, in their world, no one invaded. And that healed me. What's gradually, oh, I felt like the owner of my story again. For the first time, there was no one telling me what to do, what to wear, how to act. No one treated me like a poor or outdated person. There, a natural. How did I did such donation? I was just Ruth, the Ruth who woke up early to take care of the tomato tree, who drank coffee on the balcony with the smell of cake in the oven, who wrote in the diary without fear of judgment. There was a day, one day, I remember well, when I looked in the mirror and smiled, simple as that. I came, a smile that came from within, as if to say, Mom, you're still here. And at that moment, I thought, if Rebecca knew about the new house, maybe she would show up. But she didn't show up, and he never cared. He never asked. And deep down, I thanked him. Wow. Because my peace no longer fit the molds of that relationship. She no longer fit into that old habit of being good all the time and receiving contempt as payment. Here, alone, I began to realize that growing old could be beautiful if we didn't let anyone step on what is ours. But this calm, this clear sky, it was going to be short-lived, because there are people who only show up when they smell conquest. And when they came, they didn't come out of nostalgia. They came hungry, and I felt it. But you'll understand better when I tell you what I saw on the camera at the entrance, and the sentence that came out of my mouth when I opened that door. The rain was falling thinly that morning, dragging away the dry leaves that had accumulated in the corner of the porch. I was crouched in the kitchen cupboard, numb, trying to rearrange the shelves, cans of beans, jams I got from neighbor Martha. Well, some packets of hibiscus tea that I only drink when I feel more inside. Everything was in place. My life had found a certain order. You know, a small rhythm, and only mine. It was then that the phone rang. Unidentified number. My heart beat differently. For a second, no. I even thought it was a mistake. I answered cautiously. Hello? No? On the other side. Hop down. Siroki Sesam. A voice that I would recognize, even after 1,000 years. Hi. Oh. Mom. It was Rebecca. Sweet. Calm. Now did you? Now did said calm. Almost affectionate. No. It took me by surprise. Where are you living right now? He asked, as if looking for a subject. Are you too far from the city? Is there room? I answered, no, welcome. Without malice, I told him about the garden. On the casting one so beyond. The fireplace, the guest room. She listened and sighed. Wow, how delicious. Mom, it must be good there. We're so tired. Me and Josh, you know. So do the children. Yeah, I just seem not quite the stressed with school, home, everything. And, boy, that is in wow. Good. We thought about spending a few days there. Escape. Take a breather. I was speechless. Just a few days. Okay? Maybe, well, take Cousin Caitlin and her husband too. They need to rest. Oh, and Lia from the choir. But she's calm. The world seemed to shrink around me. The phone slipped out of my hand. I hit my elbow on the closet door. I took the device back. Still silent. She did notice. He kept talking. We arrive tomorrow afternoon. Can we? I take some things to help. See? Like diapers. Yogurt for the children. You'll love having the house full again. The house was full. She said that as if I had asked for it, as if it were a gift. I remember that. After I hung up, I sat on the kitchen floor and stayed there for a while. The rain thickened outside, and still hitting the tin roof with an almost rhythmic sound. On the taste. I stared into the void. He was trying to understand what had just happened. 12 years of absence. 12. No invitation. No visits. And now, it came with a husband, children, cousins, and who knows who else. Should I be happy? Should I prepare the sheets, make fresh bread, arrange the room with a view? Part of me wanted to believe that it was a reunion, but another part, that old and lived part that lives deep in the soul, I knew it smelled of something else. Of interest? No. But what exactly was she looking for in that house? What did Rebecca think she would find here? No. After so many years in silence, I woke up to the noise of the tires on the gravel. The window of my room looked right at the entrance of the house, and that's where I saw you. 3 cars, a black SUV, a white minivan, and a red pickup truck, all dirty from the road. And so, too, they went down as if they already knew the place. Children running, tired, backpacks thrown on the ground, a ball bouncing against the gate. Josh got out of the car with a huge cooler box in his arms, walking as if he owned the porch. Rebecca came right behind, wearing sunglasses and an outfit that mixed gymnastics with shopping trips. She gave orders. Put the diapers in there. Be careful with the food. Ali's known. Not at least. Let Lia know we're here. She looked like a 5-star hotel manager. And me? I was there. Behind the lace curtain. With my heart tight and a question stuck in my throat. Why now? I opened the door calmly. They stopped for a second, but no one hugged me. No one cried. No one said, "Mom, I miss you." Rebecca looked around and blurted out, "This house is beautiful. Mom, you should have told you it was like that." Her voice, it was sweet, but with that tone that only those who know it know how to identify. Sugar and poison. No. They entered without asking. The children went straight to the couch. Someone turned on the television. Josh asked where the Wi-Fi router was. One of the cousins opened the refrigerator as if she lived there. Rebecca took off her shoes and pointed to the hallway. "I think that corner room is the best for us. Right? It's bigger, Now, it has a good window. What turned out on. The baby needs space, Josh added. Nolan. And I'm going to need a corner with good internet. I have some work calls this week. I stood still. The words did not come out. I looked at each one of them and could only think, when did they stop asking for permission? And even more, when did I stop waiting for them to ask? There. No, I did not. Always watch up to At that moment, I understood that it was not a visit. It was an occupation, and the house that I built with so much care, that I cleaned all per meal, turning Arnold Washington, arranged with my hands, had just been invaded. But I didn't say anything. Not at that moment. I just went to the kitchen, made myself a coffee, and listened to the voices spread through the house, as if they had already lived there. They thought I would smile. That I would cheer up with the full house, with the smell of frozen pizza in the oven, with toys scattered everywhere. And look, I am here opening my heart, Monsieur Bow, telling every detail of my story with my soul in the palm of my hand. If you're still listening to me, do me a favor. Leave a like on this video and subscribe here to the channel. It's not out of vanity. No one. It's to know that there's someone there on the other side, feeling with me. Oh, because sometimes all we need is not feeling alone. That evening was the noisiest in recent years, and also the least, because being surrounded by people who don't see you, it's worse than being alone. And that first night, lying on the couch, because they gave my own bed to a child who didn't even know my name, I began to understand that this was not just an inconvenient visit. Oh, now I only just see me. It was the beginning of a test that I still didn't know if I was ready to face. But what happened the next day showed me that I would have to make a decision that would change everything, and that perhaps there would be no turning back. On the first day, when I thought they might be tired from the trip. In the second, I thought it was just disorganization. In the third, I realized that the problem was much bigger. I woke up at 6:30, as usual, with the smell of my own home, mixed with the smell of used diapers. I walked to the kitchen and found the sink full. Dinner dishes, half-filled glasses, cutlery with leftover food. Why? Rebecca came behind, with her hair tied up and her cell phone in her hand. Mom, do you make scrambled eggs for me? Josh wants pancakes, but only if they have maple syrup. Is there yet? I smiled without showing my teeth. I made the eggs. I made the pancakes. I washed the dishes. When I finished, she handed me a bag of clothes. Oh, and if you can pass this here. The children don't have a lot of clean clothes. I went up to my room, or rather, to the back room where they put me, because the baby needs to sleep without noise, and took a deep breath. The iron was in the cupboard. Got cold, bent, new, silent. Oh, how I felt like it again in those days, when Rebecca was little and I did everything without complaint. But now, there was a difference. I wasn't young anymore. I was no longer the mother of a small child. And, above all, I was no longer obligated. And in the following days, the routine became a humiliating repetition. Do you have strawberry yogurt? Where's the repellent? Do you have a cloth diaper? Mom, the kids spilled juice on the carpet. Well, I found it right down. Where's the cleaning product? The most painful thing was not even doing it. It was seeing that none of them noticed. I was a useful, invisible presence. The voice that responds, the hand that delivers, now, the body that cleanses. One day, I heard Josh saying, in the living room, that this house has its charm, and that with a good renovation, it would be possible to do something more modern. Rebecca replied, if Mom had talked about this house before, maybe we would have come earlier. Can you imagine spending the summer here? It was as if I was not just a few steps away, as if that house, bought with the sweat of my whole life, was just an available place, a resource, a benefit. I stood in the hallway with a dish towel in my hands, listening as if listening to one's own soul being taken from the shelf. In the older granddaughter's room, I saw a red backpack hanging behind the door. I got closer, and I recognized it. It was the same backpack I used with Rebecca when she was 5. I sewed it with my hands, applied a flower to the front pocket. I kept it as a souvenir. Mom, she must have taken it from the last move. I don't even know how it got there. But what hurt me? He went to see that she was being used like anything. Worthless. No memory. And I thought, is this how she sees everything I've done? As something useful, reusable, practical? At that time, I didn't cry. I just felt something strange inside my chest. A nuisance. A restlessness. Something, starting to move. Rebecca walked down the hallway, saw me with my backpack in my hand, and said with a laugh, does this thing still exist? God forbid. It was cheesy, but you loved it. And he left, as if nothing had been said, like him not holding a piece of our history, a piece of me. That night, I went to bed without dinner. She was tired, with sore knees and her back asking for rest. I wrapped myself in the blanket and stared at the ceiling. The house was full of voices, laughter. What you know, you're sick as shit sound. All copter. Series on television. Look from. The smell of popcorn that wasn't mine. And I, there, lying in a corner of the house that I paid for myself, without anyone asking how my day was. Not even a good night. Nothing. And I started to think, if they came back after so many years, why do they act as if they never left? But what I found out the next day made everything even clearer and even more painful. That night, after the house had fallen quiet for a while, and the last remote control fell to the floor, I sat on the corner of the couch with a blanket on my knees. The kitchen light was still on. The children had left toys lying around, and the smell of burnt popcorn still hung in the air. The master bedroom was locked. Wow. Rebecca slept with the baby. Josh probably snored with his phone in his hand. And I was there, in the dark, in the corner. And it was in this silence that the memory came, one after the other, as if my heart had decided to clean up. I remembered Rebecca's birth. She was scared, and the health insurance didn't cover everything. The hospital wanted an advance of almost $4,000. I was the one who paid. I took out a small loan at the time, but with high interest rates, I worked 2 more years straight to pay off. She cried when the baby was born. Oh, he thanked me. I'll give him ice, but he never spoke of it again. Years later, when Josh lost his job at the brokerage, they came to visit me. Rebecca said, "Mom, only until he replaces 5,000. They don't how." I delivered. No contract, no promise. I just delivered. I never saw that money back. And what hurts me the most, it's just that I've never seen gratitude either. There was that month when they almost lost their house. They called me at night, desperate. Nay, the bank is threatening to take everything. Mom, we need a miracle. And I was the miracle. I made a refinancing in my name. A huge risk for me, who was already close to retirement. And yet, I did. Rebecca told me, "Oh, you saved us." But 2 years later, she threw a birthday party for her daughter and didn't invite me. When I asked, "No, she replied in that cold voice, "Oh, I may, Mom. It was only for the mothers at school. No big deal. Nothing much." I remembered the times when, even exhausted from school, I baked cake to take to their house. The kids loved my banana oatmeal cake. I remember my granddaughter's first school bag. I was the one who chose it. I remembered the Christmas presents I sent by mail, even though I didn't know if they would be opened. The times I kept hurt in my pocket just to keep the door open. And now, so many years later, I slept on the couch, with the crooked sheet and the TV remote under the pillow, while my daughter snored in the room that I decorated myself with so much affection. That night, something changed inside me. It wasn't hate, nor revolt. It was a click, a cut, as if invisible scissors had broken the last thread that still held me back to the hope of being recognized. I looked at my hands, these hands that have already carried so much, and I thought, how long? If you've made it this far, stay a little longer, because the hardest part, it's yet to come. And sometimes, and we get tired of being good, that we start to understand what it is to be strong. The next morning, something happened at breakfast. Something that opened my eyes for good. I see a kid. Wanna know what it was? I'll tell you, because that's when I stopped being a spectator. And I began, silently, to plan. Breakfast began with screams. not pain, not fighting. Screams of children running barefoot, wandies, opening cabinets, knocking over glasses. Mew, ein, uptown. The floor was syrupy. Wow. Ooh, and now was syrupy, and the towel embroidered by my mother, which I used only on special dates, now had a stain of strawberry yogurt in the center. Someone had tampered with the washing machine, and it crashed. Josh showed up with an extension roller in his hand. Oh, connecting wires behind the bookshelf. Why? Saying he needed to improve the Wi-Fi signal because the connection was a shame. When I tried to say something, his cousin, now, a certain Caitlin, turned to me and said, with the cleanest face in the world, "Oh, Ruth, how?" We agreed that the upstairs bathroom will be just for us. Okay? With so many people here, it's better to share the spaces. I just nodded. When they see you, one try to stop the dojo. With a hard chin, the house was mine. But the rooms, they were no longer. In the garden, and yes, the lavender I had been growing with so much love was completely crumpled. The children used the construction site as a racetrack. My blue Italian ceramic vase, a gift from a dear student, was in shatters. I don't even know how it broke. I only saw what was left. Scattered earth, exposed roots. Like me, I went to the kitchen. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to have a coffee in peace. I took my favorite mug. What? The one with a chicken drawing in the phrase, "Good morning, sunshine." I was heating the coffee on the stove when Rebecca appeared. Opening the fridge, he frowned. Ew. Mom, did you eat the rest of the cake alone? She said. There, no, pointing to the empty tray. Mudtongue. It was a piece of corn cake. Simple, and sit down at place, that had made myself the day before. I ate it at night, before going to sleep. Slowly, quietly, my only moment of pleasure in the day. And now, even that was cause for comment, as if I were a greedy child, as if, no, in my own home, I needed to ask permission to eat what I baked with my own hands. I didn't answer. I just dropped the mug in the sink, went up the stairs slowly, and locked myself in the bathroom of my little room, the only corner where there was still a little silence. I sat on the toilet lid and cried, but it was not a fragile cry. Oh my, don't I hear this? But I'd call a fragile cry. It was a hot cry. Then so, we are not down. A cry of indignation. I wasn't sad. I was gripped by something I hadn't felt in years. Fury. It wasn't the urge to scream. It was the will to act, as if something inside me that had been hidden for so long had finally woken up. I saw my hand tremble in my lap and understood. What were they doing to me? It wasn't just a lack of education. It was disrespectful. It was an invasion. It was an attempt to erase myself again. But now, I wasn't going to allow it. No, there is a moment when we stop swallowing, an instant in which the wound turns into strength. Wow. And when that happens, no one can bend you anymore. If you've been through this, that silent breaking point, that tiredness that turns into courage. Right here in the comments. Just I know how it is. Or I understand you. It's true. I read every word, and every word helps me remember that I'm not alone in this story. After I wiped away my tears, I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a woman, tired, yes, but also lucid, and it was there, looking deep into my own eyes, that I made a decision. They weren't going to stay. At least, not like that. Not without knowing who they were dealing with. But before acting, no. I needed to confirm one thing, and this confirmation would come in the afternoon, with a conversation I overheard behind the door, and would change everything. I woke up before the sun. There were no more birds in the garden. They had fled from the noise of the last few days. The whole house slept. He stepped lightly so as not to creak the old floor. I went down the stairs slowly, turned on only the kitchen light. I made coffee just for me. 1 cup. Oh, a silence. A moment that no one stole. I sat at the table without a towel, with the mug in my hands, and I looked at my house, for what was left of her. There, among the crumbs and scattered toys, was the story of my life being trampled on, despised, turned into a vacation setting for people who never asked me if I was okay. I finished the coffee. I went up to the room. I went up to the room. I opened the dresser. I chose a blouse I hadn't worn in years. Navy blue, thick wool, with 3 round buttons on the shoulder. It was the blouse I wore on the hard days of school, when he had to face aggressive parents, tense meetings, important decisions. I wore it as if it were armor. I left the house without making a sound. The gate squeaked a little. But no one noticed. I took the car, an old sedan that Harold had left for me. I drove silently down the narrow road to Ashland. The city was still waking up. The shops with their windows on, low, the smell of bread coming from the bakery on the corner. I parked near Main Street and stood for a few minutes with my hands on the wheel. I took a deep breath. I grabbed my bag and went. The sign was small. David H. Salinger, Law and Nation. I pushed the door gently. A receptionist with the face of a college student offered me coffee. Accepted. Waited. I read the sign on the wall. Protecting what matters. When they called me, I entered with my heart beating in my ears. The lawyer was young. White shirt, brown blazer, on silver, light eyes, calm manner, nice sound. He greeted me, offered me a chair, town. Sat. What can I help with, Mrs. When had the yard? Ruth? He asked. I smiled. But it was a short smile. I rested my hands on my lap and replied in a firm but unhurried voice. I need to learn how to protect my home. From my own family. It's calm. He paused for a moment. He looked at me carefully, not as one who judges, but as one who truly listens. Can you tell me what's going on? And I counted. No, not everything, but enough. I talked about the years of silence, the unexpected visit, no, the lack of respect, the feeling of being pushed out of my own life. And then, I spoke of fear. They didn't ask. They just entered. And I let him. Wow. He nodded. No. He took a notepad. He said I wasn't the only one. That many elderly people were going through similar things, especially when it came to patrimony. Family is important. I turned so. He said, well, but it's not always fair. He explained to me about rights, about registrations, about possibilities. He spoke of powers of attorney, wills, living donations, temporary use contracts. He said that I had all the power in my hands. I just needed to act before it was too late. He offered me help. I said yes. I left that office lighter and at the same time stronger. And the other about how the city chased as if, after years of accepting, I had finally chosen. What? Chosen me? No. And what that lawyer told me on that cold Ashland morning changed the way I looked at things. He didn't make me angry. It gave me clarity. And clarity sometimes is all we need to start over. But when I returned home, I discovered something I didn't expect. A conversation, a plan, something said carelessly that fell like a stone on my chest. And then, my will to act was no longer just protection. It became justice. And this time, I wasn't going to hesitate. When I returned from David's office, the sky had already changed color. The clouds were denser, with that silvery gray hue that only appears before a turn of weather. I entered the house from the back, as if I didn't want to interrupt. I heard voices coming from the kitchen. How? It was Rebecca talking to Josh. They weren't whispering, but they weren't loud either. But the door was ajar. Midnight old step. And that's when I listened. If we do it right, we can convince her to sign something. Like, leave us as co-owners. Then we renovate. Rent in the summer. She didn't have to it. Put it on Airbnb. It will be good for her too. She won't understand much, but she'll agree. Josh laughed, and he replied, she doesn't even know that she's paying all this for us. Gas, food, laundry. If we stay here for 2 more weeks, we already save almost $2,000. It's the perfect plan. No. I closed my eyes. Not surprisingly, but by confirmation. They were not there out of nostalgia. They were by calculation, by advantage. And for the first time, I felt no pain when I admitted it. I felt precise. I returned to the city the next day. I sat down with David, showed him everything I wrote down. I asked for help to write a contract. A simple but clear document, temporary use of the property. daily charge for house maintenance, limit of people per room, prohibition of subletting or renovation without authorization, all based on current legislation. No screaming, no threats, no, only what was fair. You have that right, Ruth. This is just what any responsible adult would do with his or her own good. They can't complain about what they've already abused, he said, with that calmness that only good lawyers have. I left the office with the briefcase in hand. I passed the bank. I asked for the account statements. I sat right there in the ATM chair, with the papers on my lap. In the last 3 days alone, between supermarket, delivery, washing machine, repair, and gasoline, $712 had left my account. I, Etienne, who had lived my whole life budgeting as a public teacher, knew exactly what that meant. No, that visit was a drainage, a hole, and if I didn't do anything, therefore, calm, I would have no home for myself, no peace, no dignity. On the way back, I stopped at a stationery store. I bought a blue briefcase, just like the ones I used in school councils. I printed copies of the contract, one for each of the adults in the house. I organized everything with clips. I took a deep breath. It was just a piece of paper, but that paper, it was my shield, my voice. Enough is enough. And look, if this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, help me carry it forward. Like this video. Subscribe here to the channel. Luard. I'll type thing Tom. This makes more difference than you think, because there are too many people keeping quiet so as not to lose the little they have. And sometimes what we need is just a spark to start defending ourselves. I got home, put the papers on the living room table. Widen, shake syrup down. I called everyone. I just received to mass too. Calmly, I held what see why. What don't tell town without raising the tone. And what happened next? You need to listen, because it was at that moment that my home became mine again, even if no one else there knew yet. I waited for everyone to be home. He didn't want a speech or a scandal, only presence. Rebecca came from the balcony with the baby in her arms. Josh turned off the television, grumbling. The uncles stopped the card game in the kitchen. The cousins showed up with soda cans in their hands. The children, Lisa, fortunately, were upstairs. I stood up, blue briefcase in hand. What on the stair? The same folder that I used so many times to present projects at school. But this time, the project was different, and it was mine. Good evening. I began in a low but firm voice. I have something important to share. No one answered. They just looked at me as if it were another snack order. I opened the folder, took out the contracts and put them on the table, one by one, nice, in front of the adults. When I finished, I placed both hands on the edge of the wood and said, from tomorrow, this house will operate under hosting rules. Whoever wants to stay needs to contribute. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Rebecca was the first to react. He stood up slowly, his eyes wide. You're kidding? Right. Mom? Josh let out a dry laugh. Is this serious? Are you charging your family to stay here? Your daughter? One of the uncles murmured. Why, Ton, this is absurd. One of the cousins leafed through the contract like someone flipping through a bad restaurant menu. $40 a day? Per person? What kind of hotel do you think you have here? I remained motionless. I let them speak. I didn't counter. No, Sue. I didn't argue. I just pointed to the paper. The rules are there. They are simple. I wrote it myself with the help of a lawyer. It's all within the law. Wow, it ends. Cut unders. The house is mine, and so is the decision. Rebecca shook her head in disbelief. Is this revenge? He asked, more as an accusation than as a doubt. I looked directly at her. No, that's respect. The room seemed to shrink. For the first time since they entered that house, no one dared to raise their voice above mine. There was something in my tone that didn't ask for permission. It was a tone of someone who waited too many years, a tone that only those who have been ignored understand. The younger cousin tried to laugh uncomfortably, but soon fell silent when she saw that no one was with her. And Josh tried to find it funny, but he didn't. Wow. He knew that this gray-haired woman who slept on the couch had taken his place again. Wow. And there is no more room for jokes. You can stay until Sunday. I continued. No. After that, the conditions are these. They can sign and stay, or they can leave. I'm not going to stop anyone, but I no longer hold what doesn't respect me. No one answered. Well, just mumbling, and eyes down. Oh, there are things in life that we don't notice when we're in the middle. But now, looking from here, I see my voice has always been with me. I just had to use it. And when we start to speak truthfully, the world listens differently. If you're still listening to me, Mom, are still listening to me, is because what comes after that, it was the most unexpected moment in all this history. Their reaction, Mom, the decision they made, and what they told me the next day, that, yes, I will never forget, and maybe it's what will make you rethink everything you call family. That night was long. I went to bed early, but sleep didn't come. No, I stood there, listening to the wind beating on the shutters, the slight creaking of the old house, and the echo of what I had done. Closing a door, no matter how silent it is, still makes noise inside us. The contract was signed on the table, but what really hurt was something else. It was the memory. Now, the small faces of my grandchildren playing on the porch, the light laughter that one of them let out when he saw the lavender for the first time. It was the way Rebecca, still a girl, hugged me from behind while I made soup. It was the first letter she wrote to me when she learned to put the letters together. Small things, but they weigh down when the soul decides to move. I turned to the side. Niseo, I turned, hugged the pillow, and closed my eyes, trying to get away from these images. But there are memories that do not fade. There is love that we carry no matter how much it hurts. And that's when I thought, Neil, was I too harsh? Would a conversation, a milder request, have solved it? Have I gone too far, trying to protect myself? I stood there, with this question in my throat, mulling between what was fair and what was forgiveness. It was at that moment that I heard it. Muffled voices in the kitchen. I got up, silently, barefoot, numb, and went down slowly. The door was ajar. Nant Capnown. It was Rebecca and Josh, arguing low. How nasty, I'd sound, but not careful enough. She's old and bitter, Rebecca said. What how? How did you understand at Duckabitke? It was always weird. She only thinks about herself now. Who charges his own daughter? Josh, who writes a contract as if they were an unwanted guest. He replied, disdainfully, forget it. We will stay until Sunday, and then disappear. The house is not worth so much effort. And you know what? Maybe the old one won't last that long. In the end, well, someone inherits it anyway. My legs weakened. I leaned on the railing and went back to the room like someone carrying stones. I didn't cry. Not this time. Those words were different. They didn't break me. They opened my eyes for good. No. There. Listen. On a in that kitchen where I once made pancakes and prepared bottles. My daughter didn't talk about hurt. He spoke of profit. She wasn't hurt by my attitude. I was upset because the tables turned. It was there, long, in the dark of my room, that I understood everything. The love I gave for years was accepted as an obligation. My gestures did not generate bonds. They generated dependence. They didn't drift away out of hurt. They moved away because they didn't need it anymore. And now, they only came back because I had something to offer. The penny dropped. Heavy, hard, cold, but tight. And everything that has happened so far, that was the moment that hurt the most. Because it was the funeral of a hope that my family, somewhere, was still reciprocal. He has memories that mark us like a scar, and others that save us. That night was both. It hurt me, but it also freed me. Tell me something. Have you ever been through this? A bitter discovery, which at the same time freed you? Write there in the comments. Shares. Sometimes what we experience seems crazy until someone says, me too. The next morning, Liseon, Alninsizown, Arjuhanda. Something changed. Not in them, in me. I calm. Because after that, early morning, I stopped asking, and I started to position myself. And that's when they revealed what they were really hiding. And what happened. No, still, you will understand. Wow. Because it was just the beginning of the turnaround. I woke up before the house. As usual, the sky was still a little blue, with that cold air that only Monday mornings have. I descended slowly, feeling each step under my feet as if stepping into new territory. I put the kettle on the fire, cut 2 slices of wholemeal bread, rubbed some butter, and let it brown in the pan. I made my coffee the way I like it: strong, hot, sugar-free, and quiet. No, it was the first breakfast in days that smelled of peace. It was on its third bite when Josh entered the kitchen. In his underwear, wrinkled t-shirt, messy hair, as if he were in his own house. He opened the fridge, looked, closed it. He went to the counter, supported his arms as he did every day, and blurted out, "Do you have bread, coffee, and bacon?" I looked up from the cup. "No, pa," I replied, "but there are excellent bakeries in the city center. They stay open until noon." I continued eating. He stood still for a second, as if he expected me to be joking. It wasn't. Rebecca appeared right behind, with the face of someone who woke up upset. "Mom, the children have nothing to eat? You couldn't have left anything ready." I took the blue briefcase from the chair next to me and handed it to her. "With the contract revised, it's all there. If they want to stay, there are clear rules, and I will no longer be responsible for supporting anyone." The silence between us lasted longer than I expected. Rebecca held the paper as if it were an insult. "Do you want to charge your daughter to sleep here?" she asked, trying to look offended. I took a deep breath. "It's not a charge. It's choice. If you want to stay, contribute. If you don't want to, look for suitable accommodation." No. She left the contract on the table as if it were a dirty cloth. Josh took out his cell phone, left the kitchen without saying anything. Minutes later, Moyantan, he went still talking. I heard whispers in the room. One of the cousins called a nearby inn, right there, in front of everyone. "Yes, there are 8 of us. How much would it be per night?" "Oh, I see. No, that's okay. Thank you." When she hung up, "Oh, damn, abruptly," and she hung up. Her face said it all. "Nah, then an ordnance was roasted stardestum." They hoped that emotional blackmail would work, but reality hit strong, girl, and in the pocket. No. Josh was the first to announce it. "We're leaving tomorrow morning. You can't stay in a place where you're not welcome." I didn't answer. Rebecca, and Hilderson, in a low but angry voice, said, "Now, you're regretting it, Anzio, can you stop? What wanted else? Aren't you?" "Because I am." I looked at her with the firmness that only life teaches us. "No, no, daughter, for the first time in a long time, I'm not." And one by one, they began to collect things. The suitcases made without affection, the toys thrown in anyway, the chargers torn from the sockets. I saw my corridor have space again. My paintings have reappeared on the walls. And, above all, the sound of silence began to settle again. Wow. But this time, it wasn't loneliness. It was freedom. They did not leave by reflection. They left because they didn't want to pay. And that told me everything. There was no regret, and there was discomfort. Discomfort because they can no longer control it. What did you unlearn child on the chanta? And even so, I didn't cry. I didn't freeze. I didn't ask them to stay. No, I just watched with the dignity of someone who had already given everything. And now, Liwai, finally, she has decided to give it to herself. But at the end of that afternoon, when the house was almost empty, Rebecca returned, alone, with a letter in his hand. And what she gave me there, it would change the course of everything once again, because there was something in that letter that I never expected to read. And it was just the beginning. Rebecca appeared in the late afternoon. The sun was already hitting the side of the room, creating that sad orange at the end of Sunday. She entered slowly, as if she didn't know if she was welcome. And, for the first time since she stepped there, she was not made up, nor with a sharp voice. Wow, I was alone, tired. No. He carried a folded sheet in his hands, but he didn't give it to me right away. He came to my room, where I organized the washed pillowcases. He stopped at the door and said, Auntie, do you have a minute? I nodded. Oh, bad. We had. She went in, sat on the edge of the bed, and stood there, looking at the floor. I just wanted to let you know that I make an effort. Mom, that life is not simple. Josh, the kids, everything weighs. We don't have help. We make mistakes. But this here, that was hard. And then Sylvia bowed. Her voice trembled, but not with emotion. It was more of a rehearsed tremor, as if repeating the same monologue for years. I kept folding the sheets, waited. I brought this. She held out the sheet. Mom, a letter, and what? Handwritten, there, but with words too arranged to be sincere. If you want to read it later, said, now, and backed off. But I didn't wait afterwards. I read it right there, with it in front of me. Now. It was a collection of justifications, the difficult childhood, the tiredness, the world of today, a mixture of past and present, trying to justify the emptiness between us. At no time was there a real request for forgiveness, nor an honest acknowledgement of what they did. It was just noise, text to see if it would break me. What do you want me to say? Mom, that I was a bad daughter? What did I take advantage of? That I'm bad? Rebecca looked me in the eyes. Maybe I am, but you are not a saint either. She always had this habit of being too calm, to swallow everything. And now, after years, do you decide to do that? Right now? The voice went up. But I didn't. It's not about now, Rebecca. It never was. It's about everything. About every Christmas I was alone. Every birthday of the children that I learned about through the networks. About every penny that came out of my pocket and never came back. But it's not about money. It's about respect. That's it. This cannot be parceled out. She was silent. Oh, but I must say, I didn't get my stutters. Then he let out a sob, a forced cry. Then, when Dad stood in that city wall, like someone trying to draw tears from a dry well. Are you really going to let us go like that? I approached. Now, put my hand on her shoulder and said slowly, if one day you want to come, see me. Come with a clean heart and empty-handed. That alone is enough. Rebecca stood up. It took her a while to get out of the room. Before crossing the door, he looked back, as if waiting for me to call. I didn't call. The door closed, and next to it, something inside me too, but not with pain, with relief. For the first time, I was not the wall on which she leaned when she wanted, nor the carpet where she cleaned her feet. I was just I. The next day, the house was empty. New, now, but not silent. There was something else in the air, something I still couldn't explain, until, when tidying up the room, I found a forgotten paper on the floor. A roll that would reveal a truth that not even Rebecca dared to tell me. And that's when everything really changes. I woke up to the sound of birds, a sound that seemed to have disappeared in the last few days, swallowed by the loud voices, the heavy footsteps, the slamming doors. I got up slowly, feeling my body different, lighter, more mine. I went down the stairs without tripping over toys, without hearing childish screams or muffled arguments. For the first time in more than a week, the house was exactly as I had dreamed of it. I didn't hear that this side of the next zone, fresh, clean of noise, not only the sounds, but those of the soul as well. I started in the living room. I picked up the glasses that had been forgotten in the corner of the sofa, folded the blankets, adjusted the cushions. Then I went to the kitchen, washed the dishes left in the sink, took the crumbs off the table. Why did you shout like crumbs off the table? At no time did I grumble. There was no more hurt. Only a new type of gratitude, the one that is born after pain and the right decision. I took the bucket and the cloth, cleaned the wooden floor calmly, as if thanking their own home for having resisted. I went to the garden, where the lawn still showed the marks of the feet. The lavender was a little crooked, but not dead. I touched the branches carefully and said quietly, "You're going to get up, just like me." Then I went to the bathroom. I filled the bathtub with warm water and eucalyptus oil, sat inside as I hadn't done in a long time. I looked at my reflection in the blurry mirror. The timelines on my face didn't sadden me. They told me, each one of them was proof that I survived, that I grew up, that no one takes away the peace of those who have already learned to regain it. I went out, put on my blue robe, the same one I wore when Harold was still alive, and we had tea on the porch. I made my chamomile tea, opened the front door, and sat there, with the wind hitting my face lightly. The view was just like the one on the first day I arrived. The mountains in the background. Oh, the sound of a distant car. The clear sky. Oh, but inside me, oh, everything was different. This time, there was no one behind me waiting for me to cook dinner. No one asking for a Wi-Fi password. Mystery, shading log one not on. No one calling me weird behind my back. I was alone, and it had never been so good. No, there are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. So, if this story has touched any part inside you, enjoy this video and subscribe. Let's make this story reach those who need to remember that peace is not begged for. It is rebuilt. Slowly, one, but it rebuilds. It was when I got up to collect the cup that I saw something lying in the corner of the living room carpet. It was a crumpled paper. I took it, I unfolded it, and there, when I touched dinner, under there, in child's handwriting, how, one is stayed how pretend on out, a she in charge sopa, to be gotta. A sentence written with a colored pen made me stop the world. It wasn't Rebecca's. It belonged to my granddaughter, Leon. And what that girl wrote, it changed everything I thought I understood. Because sometimes, what we really need, it comes from where we least expect it. The letter was lying in the corner of the living room carpet. Why? It was a pink sheet, folded in half, nay, with little stars drawn on the edge. When I opened it, I immediately recognized that still insecure handwriting, with large and crooked letters. It was Emily's, my youngest granddaughter. Oh, the only one who sometimes looked me in the eyes as if she saw something that others didn't see. Grandma, no, I like your house because it smells like cake and looks happy. Sorry we made a mess. I wish I could spend more time with you. But Mom gets mad. I love you, Emily. I felt my eyes burn. I didn't cry. Not this time. But that leaf went through me like a knife. Because sometimes the truth comes from the mouth or the pen of those who still have a clean heart. Emily, without understanding the adult plots, had grasped something that no one else saw. That there, in that house, there was room for love. A calm, idiot, zone. True love, but it needed to be respected. I kept that letter in the drawer of my nightstand, not as a reminder of pain, but as a seed of something new, because, at the end of the day, sometimes what we lose is just the packaging. What really matters, maybe it's just getting started. 2 days later, while watering what was left of the lavenders, I heard a knock at the door. Not from a car. No. Not from people invading. A light, human beat. I opened it, and there she was. Martha. My neighbor next door. Whom I only knew from afar. Between shy nods on the fence and the occasional good morning at the market, she had a mint vase in her hands. Oh, good night. He wore a straw hat and a gentle smile. I heard your house was full, he said. Oh? With a complicit twinkle in his eye. I smiled back, full. And now, at last, empty. I invited her in. I prepared chamomile tea, cut 2 pieces of bread with butter and cinnamon, and we sat on the porch. The Yanayanan Mono conversation started slowly, with words that peek at each other before surrendering. But it didn't take long for everything to come out. I told him about the contract, the bags, Emily's letter, when it's due, Tom, my yacht. I told of the night I heard my daughter calling me bitter, and the morning I decided I was no longer anyone's servant. Martha listened in silence, just stirring the tea with a small porcelain spoon. When I finished, she took a deep breath and said, "My son tried to pass the deed to my house in his name. He said it was for my safety, but I knew what I wanted was control. And when I said no, do you know what they did? They made an appointment with a psychiatrist. They said I was confused. They wanted to call me crazy just because I said no. And then, Mom, we laughed. We laugh not with joy, but with that laughter of someone who knows the weight of the absurd and still stands. That afternoon, we went out to the garden together. She brought rosemary seedlings. I showed her where the earth was still soft. We stood there, on our knees, hands dirty with dirt, talking about flowers and grandchildren, old recipes and the courage we learned to have after 60. And it was there, that's all, between roots and silences, that I understood. Maybe I didn't lose a family. Perhaps I have only cleared the grounds. And when we clean up what suffocates us, it makes room for what really nourishes us. The new beginning does not always come from familiar arms. Sometimes it comes from the neighbor that you have almost never looked in the eye, and who, like you, also had to fight for dignity within their own home. Sometimes, life just wants us to have the courage to close a door, to open another, much lighter, and if you think that was the most memorable part, wait, because what I found at the gate the next day, it was something that not even in my best days of faith I would have imagined. The postman had been passing by the same wooden fence for so many years that he even knew my dog's name, when I still had one. But on that Monday morning, the envelope was different, white, with well-known handwriting, but hesitant. Now, in the sender, count Rebecca M. Kyle. I took a deep breath before opening it. I sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of warm tea and let my fingers feel the paper before my eyes. That already said a lot, because when the person can no longer speak, she writes, and when he writes, he reveals more than he imagines. The letter began with a simple mother, one, without a nickname, without forced affection, no, direct. I was hurt by everything that happened. I felt exposed, humiliated. I felt like you didn't recognize me. Until then, there was nothing new. But then, she kept going. In the following days, I kept asking myself, how many times have I treated you like this without realizing it? How many times have I acted as if your house was an extension of mine? Once to extent, as if your presence was an obligation and not a choice. I know I've always run. I've always asked. I've always demanded. Me. And I never asked how you were. Perhaps, maybe I never noticed that you were also a woman with a heart, with tiredness, with limits. And if that's it, forgive me. No, I don't know if I can change it overnight, but I thought a lot about everything, and I wanted you to know. I read the entire letter without blinking. Each line was a wound opening and trying to heal at the same time. The most curious? I didn't feel angry, nor relief. I'll be so down. I felt lonely, truth, and maybe a little sad that it took so long, because she only saw when the door closed, for having only written after silence. But still, it was something better than emptiness. I folded the letter carefully, as if folding an old handkerchief that still holds perfume. Now, I kept it in a little blue box where my little memories are, the bracelet Harold gave me on our 40th birthday. Rebecca's first lock of hair, a faded photo of Emily sleeping on my lap. Everything there, a place of remembrance and hope, but not of decision, because at that moment I knew I didn't have to answer. Not yet, because regret, my daughter, I vowed, is not what is written. That's what we live, and I needed to see or feel whether she was living that regret or just trying to ease her conscience. For now, I have chosen to continue living my life. My garden was beginning to bloom again. Martha always came on Tuesdays, and together we planted new rosemary. The house had breathed again in the rhythm of my heart. The silence no longer hurt. It was a hug. It was presence, and I, for the first time in decades, was feeling whole, complete, not by someone, but for me. But life, that damned old woman, never tells us when it will surprise us again. And it was when I least expected it that something happened in front of that house, something that made me get up from my chair, drop the cup in the air, and running like I hadn't done since I was 40, because sometimes fate knocks on the door. But this time, he didn't bring a letter. It brought something much more alive, in September, much more urgent, and impossible to ignore. Lean. I didn't know that aged hands could still dig so firmly. But here I was, with the small shovel stuck in the damp dirt, marking each hole as if drawing a new line in my own destiny. I started with lavenders. Of course, they have always been my favorite flowers, not only for the smell, but for the way they resist, even crooked by the wind, even trampled by inattentive feet. Then came the tomatoes, which I planted in a sunnier corner, thinking about the fresh salads that Martha and I could share in the coming months. And finally, the daisies, those simple ones, which do not attract attention but fill any garden with silent joy. Planting that day was more than taking care of the garden. It was a ritual. Each buried seedling carried some of the pain of the past few years, but also the hope that something would blossom differently. As the earth passed through my fingers, I felt that every seed that came down there was a choice. The choice to no longer live by absences, to no longer bleed for the fowls, the choice to nourish myself with what I am, on you, and not with what they expected me to be. Because what they did to me, it won't be my end point. I finished planting with dirty hands and a clean soul. I went in, washed my arms up to my elbows, put on my favorite linen blouse, and sat at the desk with my new notebook. I had bought it weeks ago, but only now I knew what to write there. Memories for those who have never heard my voice. That is how I titled the first page, and I filled it slowly, like someone blowing dust from above the soul. I wrote about the school where I taught for 32 years, about the day Harold proposed to me with a tin ring and wet eyes, about the smell of Rebecca's childhood, who always slept with her little hand glued to my collar. And I also wrote about the night I was treated as a guest inside my home. About the day I found my own name in the mirror again. I started going to the city library. I discovered a reading group for women over 60 years old. Well, I met Adelaide, who has had 3 husbands, and today says that the best of them is the cat. I met Irene, who only learned to read at 58. I started taking cakes to the meetings, and on one of those days, I told them that I was writing my memoirs. You should publish it, Ruth, they said. Oh, and for the first time, I didn't find the idea absurd. Who knows? One day, the nights were mine again. I replaced the noise of cutlery hitting the pots with pages turned calmly. I slept without locks, without the anguish of being silent to the peace. Now, peace lives here, and it's genuine. Sometimes I still hear laughter in my memory. Sometimes I see the shadow of Rebecca passing in the hallway of longing. But I don't let these images dominate me. They come and go, and when they go, they leave room for the present. The other day, I went to the porch with a piece of pie and saw Emily, my granddaughter, getting out of her father's car. He had a little book in his hands and shy eyes. She ran to the fence. Grandma, I was the one who wrote that little letter. Me. Did you read it? I smiled. Yes, I did. My flower, and can I come plant with you one day? I wondered, for a second, if it was safe, but the answer came easily. You might pass the bulb child. Hack down. Yes, you can, as long as you come with a clean heart and hands ready to move the earth. Childhood has a power that we forget when we grow up, the power to try again without fear. And maybe, just maybe, that's when things really start to settle down for the new generation by the little hands that they have not yet learned to hurt. But little did I know that I still had something stored in time, because the next day, when I opened my mailbox, I found more than one piece of mail. It was an invitation. and the name that came on the envelope. It made me sit on the balcony stairs and take 3 deep breaths before opening. Because when we think the chapter has closed, sometimes it's just a break, and the next act, it can be the most unexpected. That morning, with the sun filtering through the lacy curtain of the kitchen, I sat down with my cup of chamomile tea and looked around. The house was the same, the light wood walls, the creaking of the closet door, the smell of fresh bread that I baked myself. But inside me, wide almost one, everything had changed. That house, which was once invasion territory, became my fortress, not because of the walls, but because of the limits that, finally, I learned to set. Rebecca did not write more. Josh, much less. The others, they were silent along with her. And you know what? It didn't hurt me, because I understood that it wasn't a loss. It was a cleansing. I raised a daughter. Now, yes, I gave everything I could. But it was later, much later, much, that I remade myself as a woman, as a whole human being. Martha keeps coming to the quarterfinals. We exchange plant seedlings, recipes, and sometimes just silences, good silences, those that don't charge, don't crush. Emily, my granddaughter, wrote a note in crooked letters saying she wants to plant lavender just like Grandma Ruth's. I kept it in my diary, and I follow, in peace, with little, and honey, what was so gayer, but entirely. You know, there's something that life taught me late, but that I'll never forget. Loving is not synonymous with annulling yourself. True love does not require us to extinguish ourselves so that the other shines. Saying no is not harshness. It is dignity, and dignity is a garment that, once put on, we don't take it off. Because when someone exceeds our limits, and we allow it, it stops being love and becomes submission. Today, when I look in the mirror, I no longer see only the mother. I see the woman. I see Ruth, who survived, who rebuilt herself, and who now chooses who she opens the door to and the heart. If you have come this far with me, thank you from the heart. Really, it's so rare for someone to listen to our story to the end. But you stayed, and that warms me up like a silent hug. One of those who say, I see you. If this video touched you, if any of my words found shelter in there, leave your like, because for me, it's more than a button. It's support. It is presence. And if you want to come back for another coffee and listen to other stories that life has taught me, subscribe here to the channel. It will be nice to know that you are around. Tell me in the comments which city you are watching. I love to know how far these words go, and it activates the bell. See? That way you don't lose when the coffee is ironed again. And I have another piece of soul to share with you, because life goes on, and so are the stories. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story. and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.